Get out of there, you're in big trouble. Very, very bad. I also have a twin brother. The Star Trek cast felt bad about what they did 8 times. People across America were angered by a kiss that made 2 actors the targets of hate mail and discrimination. A woman had to wear a shorter skirt every day on set so that the audience would like her. People who were once known for being smart were rewritten as having none, and a screen legend who was once admired by everyone was killed not by an enemy but by a bad plot. And a cold studio choice. Not every moment in the sparkling world of Star Trek was perfect. There was a world of regret behind the smiles and greetings of engage and live long and prosper. The people who built the legend were haunted by the thought that they had helped destroy something holy. Here are 8 scenes that the Star Trek cast really wishes they hadn't filmed. There were times when the studio lights couldn't hide the shadow of shame. They couldn't forgive themselves just because they were famous. William Shatner feeling bad about the kiss that shook America on the planet Plutonius. They were just 2 people being forced to act for people who called themselves gods. But America blew up when Captain Kirk's lips touched Uhura's. In 1968, one kiss on TV or in movies was enough to split the country in 2. Since it wasn't just a scene between 2 people. A white guy kissed a black woman for the first time in the history of US TV. Plato's Stepchildren, an episode that seemed harmless, turned into a political hot potato. NBC got scared and banned the kiss. They then ordered an alt-ears, turn-it version with no lip contact. William Shatner agreed with the nod, but when the camera rolled, he did something different on purpose. A lot of people on the team were shocked when he held Nichelle Nichols tight and kissed her. The set was dead quiet when the director yelled cut. No one was brave enough to talk. America went crazy when the show aired. A lot of hate mail arrived at the office. A lot of southern states said they would ban Star Trek because it had a kiss of the wrong color. People were mean to Shatner. Nichols got letters from unknown people that were full of bad words and Confederate flags. Someone wrote, "We'll burn down the station if you show that scene again." After many years, Shatner thought, "I was proud of that moment, but it also made me hate. We were used as symbols and as targets." While that was going on, both he and Nichols were told to keep quiet. This is just to calm down. There will be no interviews or argument. But that silence hurt Shatner's success more than anything else. Star Trek was created to talk about freedom and equality. Still, for those ideas to be shown, the 2 actors had to act like they were really scared and alone. Was it brave, or was it just too risky for the time? Because if that kiss split America, there was a woman behind it who almost left the Enterprise for good. 2. The woman who almost stopped being Uhura is Nichelle Nichols. Nichelle Nichols was one of the few black women on American TV in 1966, when Star Trek first aired. She wasn't playing a maid, nanny, or nameless extra. She played Lieutenant Nyota Uhura, who was in charge of communications on the Enterprise. Lieutenant Uhura was smart, obedient, and had a low, authoritative voice. Nichols was quietly angry that she was written as a shadow behind white guys on a show about equality, even though she got a lot of praise and attention. She chose to leave after the first season. A few lines, like "Yes, Captain" or "Hailing frequencies open," were all that were on her scripts every week. There is no movement, no activity, and no real voice. At a 2011 event, she said, "I loved my character. But I thought she shouldn't be able to live. I was an officer, but written as someone who just sat there and smiled." Then fate intervened. In the most extraordinary way, one night at a Beverly Hills event, a man approached her to say hello. He shook her hand, smiled kindly and said, "I'm Martin Luther King Jr." King told her that Star Trek was the only TV show he watched with his children and that she absolutely could not leave. "You don't understand," he told her. "You're not just acting a role. You're showing the future. You represent hope, not just for women, but for all people of color. You're not there as decoration. You're there so the world can see that we belong in the future." Nichols burst into tears. The next morning, she tore up her resignation letter and returned to the set. She never left Star Trek again. Though her dialogue remained minimal, Uhura's meaning grew beyond the script. She became the first true icon of a black woman in space, standing as an equal among pilots, engineers, and captains. Hundreds of young black women would later say they chose careers in science, aviation, or engineering because they saw Nichols on screen. Among them was astronaut Mae Jemison, the first black woman in space, who once said, "I didn't dream of being Uhura. I dreamed of working with her." Years later, Nichols confessed, "I'm angry that I ever wanted to quit. If I had left, maybe an entire generation would have lost hope." To most viewers, Uhura was just a character, but to millions, she was proof that the future had no color and that sometimes one person's choice to stay can change the world. And while Nichols stayed for hope, another actor would soon carry the guilt of destroying that very hope by killing a legend. 3. Malcolm McDowell, killing a legend on a broken bridge. When Star Trek Generations premiered in 1994, audiences expected an epic passing of the torch, where the old and new captains would meet and close an era with a death worthy of legend. Instead, they witnessed one of the most controversial moments in sci-fi history, the death of Captain James T. Kirk. On screen, Kirk's sacrifice seemed grand. Collapsing bridge, clouds of dust, swelling music. But when the sound faded, theaters fell silent. Not from emotion, but disappointment. No light, no farewell, no trumpet for Starfleet's greatest hero. He died because a bridge broke. Malcolm McDowell, who played the villain Tolian Sorin, the man who pulled the trigger, has admitted deep regret ever since. In an interview with StarTrek.com, he said bluntly, "If you have an American television icon, why kill him like that? A broken bridge, a fall, it's stupid." When he first read the script, he assumed it was only a draft, expecting something more, a proper glorious death. But nothing changed. The scene remained short, flat and emotionless. Even William Shatner, who had embodied Kirk for nearly 3 decades later, wrote, "I wish there had been more trumpets for his death." McDowell said that every time he re-watched Generations, he felt sad and ashamed. Not for himself, but for the millions of fans who grew up with Kirk and thought he should die like a star, not like a computer glitch. He said it was like a bad joke that no one meant to make fun of. People in Hollywood talked about Kirk's death for months. Some people said Paramount killed a legend to get people to buy seats. Some people said it was the director, the writers, or even Shatner. But McDowell wouldn't say who was to blame. "I pressed the button. I still feel like I destroyed a part of everyone's memory, even if it was just on film." Generations is still the best example of how not to kill a hero, even after almost 30 years. Even though McDowell has played many bad guys, Tolian Sorin is still the one that scares him the most. A few years later, another character would be shamed for staying alive without Leonard Nimoy's brain, Spock's brain. This would be an embarrassment that would last a lifetime. In 1968, when the first season of Star Trek started its last season, Leonard Nimoy was already a famous person. He wasn't just pretending to be Spock, he was Spock. He had pointing ears, a cool look, and a deep voice. The personification of reason, science, and what people could be if they got past their emotions and instincts. He thought it had to be a joke when he read the script for an episode called Spock's Brain. The story was almost too silly to believe. An alien species takes Spock's brain, but his body keeps moving and working. It even works for 24 hours without a brain. Captain Kirk and his team literally went out to find the brain that was lost. Being the first show of the 3rd season, it should have been a big deal, but it turned into a joke that neither the viewers nor the team could take seriously. Nimoy wrote in his autobiography, "I am Spock, I was embarrassed the whole time I was filming. I stood there in a Starfleet uniform, listening to people talk about reinstalling Spock's brain, and I just wanted to disappear from the set." He said he had never felt so professionally insulted. Spock, once a symbol of intellect and human evolution, was reduced to a shambling, remote-controlled body. Nimoy looked around and saw colleagues trying to act, a director pretending to be calm. While he could only ask himself, "What are we doing?" When it aired, critics savaged the episode. TV magazines called it a stain on Star Trek's history, the franchise's lowest point, and an idea so bad it could only exist in a universe without logic. And for decades, fans have cited Spock's brain as proof that even geniuses can lose their way. Nimoy almost never brought up the episode in interviews. Whenever someone asked, he would smile and change the subject. Colleagues said that whenever he saw the word brain in any other script, he would sigh. He called Spock's brain a nightmare that begins with the audience's laughter and ends with the actor's silence. And there was another captain who suffered a similar humiliation, not for losing his brain, but for being forced to dance. 5. Avery Brooks, Alamarain. When a single dance humiliated the captain. In the history of Star Trek, no captain had ever been put in a situation as bizarre as Benjamin Sisko of Deep Space Nine. In the episode Move Along Home, aired in 1993, Sisko and his senior officers are trapped inside an alien game, a strange living board game where their every move becomes a game piece. Midway through the episode, a seemingly tense scenario suddenly turns into a musical routine. Captain Sisko, Major Kara and Dr. Bashir must hop across glowing squares while chanting a childish rhyme. Alla Marani, count to 4. Alla Marani, then 3 steps more to scenes so silly and so long that viewers weren't sure whether to laugh or cry. Avery Brooks, who played Sisko, later said he wanted to run off the set during the shoot. To him, Deep Space Nine was not a comedy. It was the darkest, most mature chapter in the Star Trek universe. A story of war, loss, and faith in chaotic times. And now, amid interstellar politics and hard-won philosophy, he was being told to sing and dance like a children's skit. Brooks later said at a convention, "I knew I would never live that scene down." The awkwardness in Sisko's eyes. That was completely real. The scene quickly became a legendary meme in the fandom. The captain hopping squares. Many admit they can't rewatch the episode without fast-forwarding. Even the production team called it a stylistic accident of the first season. In the documentary, What We Left Behind, director David Zapponi was blunt. "If I had to pick the worst scene in Trek history, it would absolutely be the Alla Marine scene." Brooks, always serious and philosophical about acting, treats the episode as a small scar on his career. He doesn't blame anyone. He simply says that every Star Trek actor has a day like that, the day they wish they hadn't come to set. Yet some argue that this embarrassment made Sisko even more memorable, a captain who endures everything, war and a hopscotch game. Today, Alla Marani stands as proof of a peculiar truth only Star Trek can deliver. That amid lessons on humanity and cosmic philosophy, there's still room for a moment of unbelievable silliness. Have you ever watched the Alla Marani scene and felt both amused and sorry for Sisko? The next person chose a different way to push back, by going cold and silent in front of the camera. Silent rebellion on set with his calm features and smooth British voice, Alexander Siddig, who played Dr. Julian Bashir on Star Trek Deep Space Nine, was seen as the show's compassionate heart. His character embodied empathy and loyalty, a physician who put others' lives before his own and one of the few in the Trek universe who never lost faith in humanity. But in 1997, as the series entered its 5th season, that faith was shattered. One day before filming Dr. Bashir, Iddig was told that his character wasn't a normal human being. The script revealed that Bashir had been genetically enhanced as a child, engineered to be smarter, faster and more perfect. In other words, a huge portion of the life, personality and ideals Siddig had built for the character suddenly felt meaningless. No one had told him earlier. No meeting, no explanation, no warning. Just a script slapped down on the table, along with the revelation that everything you thought about your character is wrong. Siddig recalled, "I felt betrayed. If they were going to make him an engineered child, the least they could have done was tell me more than a day in advance." Instead of lashing out or quitting, Siddig chose a subtler and colder PPA retaliation. He walked onto the set, hit his marks, stared straight into the lens and delivered his lines like a machine. No emotion, no expression, no sparkle in the eyes. "I knew I was ruining the scene," he said, "but at least it was my choice." The episode aired and no one on the crew noticed the rebellion. Only fans sensed something off in Bashir's delivery. Later, Siddig called it a small revenge, but enough to make me feel I still had some control. The episode is now considered a turning point for Deep Space Nine, but for Siddig, it's a scar. He said, "I love Star Trek, but from that moment on, I no longer believe the actor always knew his character best." Perhaps that quiet revolt made Bashir feel more real. Not just a doctor in space, but a portrait of an artist in Hollywood quietly rebelling to protect his own convictions. And next comes someone who chose to erase every trace of a role that made her feel like nothing more than decoration in a man's world. 7. Terry Garr, the role I want to forget. In the late 1960s, as Star Trek began expanding its universe, creator Gene Roddenberry planned a new spin-off, Assignment Earth. It was meant to follow a time-traveling secret agent named Gary Seven and his assistant Roberta Lincoln. A smart, quick-witted young woman who was supposed to represent the modern American woman of the new decade. The role of Roberta went to Terry Garr, then an unknown actress in her early 20s. She believed it was her big break, a chance to prove her talent and enter Hollywood with a strong, independent role. But within days on set, she realized how wrong she was. According to crew members, Roddenberry repeatedly ordered wardrobe adjustments. Each time shorter, tighter, and sexier. Whenever Gar wore something modest, he would say it didn't fit the spirit of the character. When she protested, he just smiled and said, "Roberta is a woman of the new decade. She should be confident about her body." Confident, but not in control. Even behind the scenes of a show celebrated for its progressive ideals, Terry Gar was treated as little more than decoration to attract male viewers. Years later, after finding fame in Young Frankenstein and Tootsie, Gar almost completely denied her involvement with Star Trek. When asked about it in a Starlog interview, she replied coldly, "I did that a long time ago, and I pretty much deny I ever did it." Her denial came from a deep sense of humiliation, not just because of the short skirt, but because she knew that image would follow her forever. She once said, "If that series had been picked up, I'd be hearing about Star Trek until the day I die, maybe even after that." For most people, it was just a small part, a few minutes on screen. But for Terry Gar, it was a bitter lesson about control over one's body, one's image, and one's worth in Hollywood. Because even in a universe celebrated as enlightened, Star Trek couldn't escape the gravity of real-world sexism. When asked why she never appeared at Star Trek fan conventions, Gar smirked and said, "I don't hate the fans. I just don't ever want to see that skirt again." And then came a man who almost lost his breath, literally, because of makeup. 8. Jeffrey Dean Morgan, the makeup that nearly killed the role. Before he became Negan, the ruthless yet magnetic villain of The Walking Dead, Jeffrey Dean Morgan was just another struggling face in Hollywood. He'd appeared in dozens of TV shows, but few remembered his name. So when a small opportunity called Star Trek Enterprise came along in 2003, he thought it might be his long-awaited break. He had no idea the role would nearly make him quit acting forever. In the episode Carpenter Street, Morgan played a Xindi reptilian, an alien plotting to destroy Earth. It was a minor role with little dialogue but required a full-body prosthetic. Every day he spent 4 hours sitting motionless while technicians glued layers of latex, molded silicone onto his face and airbrushed him in thick green paint. When finished, they inserted 2 small tubes through his nostrils so he could breathe under the mask. No food, no water, no talking, just faint breathing beneath artificial skin. Morgan recalled in an Entertainment Weekly interview, "I remember them smearing slime all over my face, sticking tubes up my nose so I could breathe. I couldn't eat. I couldn't talk. I went home in tears. I almost quit acting." The costume was unbearably heavy and the mask left him nearly blind. Every removal session ripped his skin raw. Sweat collected under the prosthetics and technicians had to use scalpels to slice the glue away without cutting him. For Morgan, Enterprise wasn't a set, it was a prison. Ironically, the role earned him no recognition or money. Most of his scenes were cut and no one even realized it was him under the alien suit. All the pain, exhaustion and tears disappeared behind the fleeting guest starring credit that rolled by in seconds. But that ordeal became a test of endurance, one that reshaped his perspective. After Enterprise, I told myself, if I can survive that, I can do anything. A few years later, he returned to Hollywood stronger, starring in Watchmen and then rising to global fame as Negan in The Walking Dead, a character both feared and adored. This time, no makeup or mask hid his face. So was a few minutes of screen time worth enduring suffocation, torn skin, and sleepless nights? Tell us what you think in the comments below. After hundreds of episodes and thousands of hours of filming, Star Trek isn't just a story about the stars, it's a story about people. Behind every uniform, every badge were not untouchable legends, but real human beings, dead, flawed, and yet so devoted to their craft that they kept boarding the Enterprise, knowing they might fail again. And perhaps that's why Star Trek has endured for more than half a century. Not because it's perfect, but because it dares not to be perfect, just like us. So what makes a mistake more memorable than a masterpiece? Is it the botched scene or the humanity that shines through the cracks in the Starfleet uniform? Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to uncover more untold stories behind Hollywood's brightest lights.